All right, what's up, guys? How we doing? Chuck and Nick here. Happy Monday. Bringing you some, I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun slate. We have some weird chalk today, but we'll get into it. Try and figure it out for you guys. Nick, how we doing?
Good man, and yeah, it's a pretty decent looking slate. They did chop off the late game, which actually would have been pretty interesting. No Trey Young again, so yeah, we're left with some interesting spots in Memphis, Minnesota. But a lot of the studs are on this slate too. A lot of the big pay ups, so we're gonna have to make some tough choices.
Yeah, it's like we have, we have the good. I don't know if it's good chalk value, but we have enough chalk value that we can pretty much play whoever we want in most of our lineups. I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is supposed to be the highest owned player on the slate, I think. Yeah, 70% on both sides. Like, this seems insane, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, at the same time, I don't know. I just wish there were more obvious pivots. Like, yeah, if you're only playing a handful of lineups, I think he's tough to get away from, assuming he starts. Um, but yeah, man. I mean, I don't feel great about it. Then we have John Conchar as chalk over on FanDuel, who's kind of a similar play. It's just like, man, yeah. I think you almost have to eat it and just hope that you get the pay ups right tonight, and that's where we're gonna have to try to get different.
Yeah, and so Minnesota's playing Charlotte. It is a 13-point spread, so we are in blowout territory. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kyle Anderson are the two highest owned players on the slate. I mean, seeing Joel Embiid, the third highest owned, I don't know that we've seen this in a long time, especially at his price. And so it seems like it's just really easy to get to him. There's some other good centers that we can get to, but I mean, Joel Embiid has just been destruction, basically, and they're playing San Antonio. That's a 14-point spread, so also blowout territory. I mean, Jaden Ivey is the fourth highest owned guy at 6,700. It seems kind of insane, but he's also been on a tear. And so, I mean, these are all like blowout games. And so I'm going to be finding a lot of pivots, but, Jose Morales in the chat, give us the chalk we have to eat. I think we just have to eat some of it, right?
Yeah, I think it's necessary to a point. Like Alexander Walker's the one I probably feel the most comfortable with. Because to your point about the blowouts, we have seen him in this situation in the past. I think Edwards was out instead of Conley, but regardless, that game blew out and he still played into the fourth quarter, even though he was in the starting lineup. So yeah, I think he is a higher floor than we usually see. Some of these chalk pieces that emerge with like a lower usage point guard in Mike Conley. So I don't know. I think he's fine. The Conchar one gives me some pause, but again, Memphis is so thin right now. It's tough not to get to him at his price either. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some weird ones too, though. I mean, I like Ivy as a player, but
Mhm.
7,500, almost 30% owned on FanDuel. There's just so many pivots in that range. I think it's easier to get off like the mid range to high range chalk today. Some of the very cheap value is tough to kind of find plays that might be able to match the upside. But for someone like Ivy, like there's a ton of guards that 7,500 you could find as pivots. I think that's where you're probably going to want to get different.
Yeah, the mid range is pretty strong today. I'm getting a lot of, DeMar DeRozan and Kobe
Mm-hmm.
White specifically.
Yep.
And AJT in the chat, we going to get Ant Edwards ruled out 1 minute after lock. He's questionable with an illness. I want to
Mm-hmm.
say that the last couple times he was or maybe just the last time he was questionable in a game where they were projected to win by a lot anyway, he still played. And so we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, if that ends up happening, we kind of just have to play Nah and Kyle Anderson and hope that they play well, I guess. I mean, we have not
Right.
projected for 30 minutes. Kyle Anderson projected for 23. It's like the 30-minute projection on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I don't know, 3,500 on DraftKings. It's kind of hard to get away from. Like, with that said, I am under the field currently, under the 70%, but he's still going to be a big part of what I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm.
Some other injury news that we have. Cade Cunningham's doubtful, not expecting him to play. Kristaps Porzingis is out. Nick Richards is doubtful. He's probably not going to play, and so PJ Washington's probably going to be a big piece for us on Charlotte. We'll see if we can find anything else there. I mean, they're playing Minnesota against a super chalk, so if we don't think it's going to be a super blowout, maybe we have to try to get to a Charlotte piece.
Yep.
And then Markelle Fultz is out for the Magic, so Cole Anthony is kind of a good price. We'll get into him in the guards. Grayson
Yep.
Allen, he's on the main slate, right? Yeah, he's questionable. They chopped off the last game, which is super annoying.
Yeah, it is.
The Atlanta Kings game,
Good
and
game for
then
fantasy too. Would have been.
yeah, I was building my night slate lineups. I'm like, man, I wish we had DeJounte and Jalen Johnson
Mm-hmm.
on the main slate, but and then Xavier Tillman is questionable for Memphis, and so we saw GG Jackson be like mega chalk in this spot when I think Xavier Tillman was out last week or something, and he completely failed. And no one's going to play him today. So if Xavier Tillman is out, I don't mind taking a couple shots. But I mean, he kind of came back down to earth after having like a crazy kind of debut in the NBA, right?
Yeah, he got to talk to Shaq on TNT, I think, after that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we did see Tillman out, I think, last game, and Gigi didn't start. And he did not do much coming off the bench. So definitely a situation to monitor. They are playing Toronto, and Toronto's another team who's missing Podol, so they don't really have a true center other than Jonte Porter. So I'm a little bit hesitant to go to Gigi here. I get that he'll be low owned, but we've seen the Grizzlies run small with Tillman out, and I think they could do that again. But I like Jaren Jackson regardless there.
Yeah, you mentioned John Conchar. He's been starting. Vince Williams has been an incredible,
he's a guy.
incredible NBA player. Like he showed us some flashes, but I mean, he's 6,200, and we're still interested in playing him. If you told me that a month ago, I'd say who. But he's been doing really well. He's been hitting value, and I mean, he's playing big minutes, which is the big thing. And so his usage is pretty good. Even playing next to Luke Kennard, who's also kind of taking on a bigger role. He had like 6 assists the other night. Yeah, which is insane. And he'd done it every other game. And so 30-plus minutes. Memphis versus Toronto is going to be a big part of my exposures as well tonight.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we have to keep an eye on the ownerships. Contract did seem a little overowned compared to the others. I love Vince Williams, but he's expensive. 6 straight games with a steal for him, though. That's pretty wild. He's definitely getting it done on both sides of the floor. I like Kennard here. I mean, going back to his Duke days, he did play a lot of point guard. I think he can facilitate when he needs to. But yeah, I mean, the price does continue to climb on all these guys with so much of that team out for the foreseeable future.
And then, so Goga was interesting. I don't think he was on the main slate yesterday. I skipped the main slate, so not 100% sure. But he was out of the rotation. Did not play yesterday, which is super weird because he's been one of the best defensive centers in the NBA this season. But with Wendell Carter coming back, I mean, Wendell Carter, I'm surprised he played 34 minutes. I mean, it's like the most minutes he's ever played in his career. But he's been on a tear as well. And at 5,400, I mean, he's someone that we have to keep in mind at the center spot if we're not paying up for Embiid.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, at his price, he makes a ton of sense here. Obviously, not a good matchup against Cleveland with the 215 total. But really, I mean, the price makes him someone I'm definitely going to be looking at. Just to go off that, another center I really like tonight who's lower owned than I thought he would be is Al Horford. No Porzingis. Dallas has been terrible in the front court defensively. I know Horford's kind of inconsistent, but this does feel like the type of matchup he should really be able to put up numbers in.
Yeah, and I want to say we recommended Horford last time Kristaps was out. Didn't work out, but he's in a good spot. His price came up a little bit, but I think we're just going to go right back to him and not think twice about it.
Yep.
And so we have one more question. Base second in DK value, good play. I mean, I think he's fine. The price is probably a little bit too. Is he on the DraftKings slate?
He's not on the. He's not on the main slate.
Okay, yeah. Let's go ahead and so if you're looking at the model on your own, just make sure you click in DK main. I was about to say I'm not getting Sadiq Bey in my exposures, but let's just go ahead and dive into it. Let's look at the guards. So we mentioned a couple chalk pieces. Now, I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker DK value is kind of insane. And then Gary Trent looks fine. Ant Edwards, if he's in. I mean, he's kind of a deep PPP play. His ownership seems kind of high. But remember, we don't mind playing players on the team that's doing the blowing out. Right. So it's probably fine. RJ Barrett, still too cheap. And on that note, quickly, still probably a little bit too cheap because we still want to play him. They're still both coming in for 20%. Before we get to the high end guys, what other values are we looking at? We already mentioned a bunch of the guys that we like.
Yeah, I mean, Pat Beverly's out. Still no Melton for the 76ers. It's tough to know exactly who that's going to benefit, but the model seems to really like Oubre. He's rating second as value. On FanDuel as guard, I think he's pretty high up for DK as well. I don't mind it. Definitely been pretty damn inconsistent, but you have to think he's going to have to play more here. You mentioned Kobe White early on. I do like a lot of the Bulls tonight here against Phoenix in that late game. RJ Barrett, guard eligible on DK. I can't really call him value at 6,900, but the model is projecting him as value. He's someone I'm getting to on FanDuel at forward where he's even more expensive. But yeah, if you could pay some 7K for him as a guard. I do like him a lot. And then one other guy who's guard on DK but not on FanDuel is Brandon Miller. I mean, he's been tremendous with Gordon Hayward out of the lineup lately. Seems like he's turned a corner. I don't know if it's just a streak or what, if he's going to stay this hot. But kind of like Alexander Walker on the other side, he is one of these young players that does seem to get run even if the game were to blow out. So I really like using Miller opposite a lot of my Alexander Walker exposure.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And Minnesota is one of the toughest matchups in the NBA this season, and none of these Charlotte guards are coming in for any ownership. Like, we're not going to be interested in Nick Smith with LaMelo back, but if you want to take shots on Brandon Miller, Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball, I think they're all fine pivots. Like, not necessarily pivots. I was going to say LaMelo's kind of a pivot from the other high-end guards.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you think the game stays closer than 13, then I think he's totally fine to mix in a few percent.
Yeah, and Conley's a good defensive guard. People forget. So him being out actually
Mm-hmm.
makes that matchup a little bit softer than usual.
Yeah. And then can we get to Embiid and Luka on DK, or is there not enough value? I feel like we have enough value. It's not a day where we have infinite value because, I mean, most of it's just going to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson, but we can definitely get to Luka. I mean, yeah, very clearly the top OF index play at the guard spot. I mean, his price is also the only guy above 10K,
Yep.
but 11% Luka versus what the 30% Embiid's coming in at. And we can find some low price centers that
Yep.
we can just play Luka instead of Embiid. The difficult spot is going to be fitting in this many point guards. I mean, we can play 3 point guards basically on DraftKings, so it's not that big of a deal. On FanDuel, maybe it's a little bit tougher. But yeah, what other high end guards are we looking at today?
I mean, kind of more in the mid range. I really like Derek White on both sides. He's been super streaky this season. There was like a month where he was Boston's like best scorer, and obviously that was a little bit fluky. But he's coming off 2 games now where he's been over 40 fantasy points. Dallas not really known as a defensive team. This is one of the higher totals you're going to see on a Celtics game all season. And we're getting Derek White 6,700 over on DK. That just feels way too cheap to me. 74 on FanDuel. I like him there as well. And yeah, I mean, it's not that he's unowned, but he's still sub 20%. And I think point per dollar, he makes a lot of sense here. Other than him, I mean, I'm definitely going to be heavy on Derek White. I don't mind Quickly. Still seeing massive usage. He's pretty popular here as well. Trying to find one that's lower owned. Everyone I'm saying is actually pretty popular. But I get it. I mean, they're underpriced. So we should be drawn to them. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. As far as like high end goes, I really, really do want to get to Luca. I will shout Donovan Mitchell though. Whenever we're gonna have Garland and Mobley out, he should be considered. It's funny, he's never owned, even though he usually scores as well as any of the other guards. Then the other night he was finally chalk and he kind of busted, and now he's back below 10% on both sides. So if I'm not getting to Luca, I do want to get to a lot of Donovan Mitchell here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's a low total, 216. I mean,
Yeah.
versus Luca's total of 240. Like, yeah, it's a gigantic difference, but we're also paying a little bit less, and I don't mind kind of overpaying for guys like Donovan Mitchell in this spot. And I say
Mhm.
overpaying just because the pace of the game is going to be very slow.
Yeah, it
But
is.
if no one's going to play him, he has a ceiling. Like you said, he kind of burned everyone last time he was chalk, so that's a spot I like getting to. And then Milwaukee versus Detroit. Another big spread, 12 points. It's kind of crazy that Milwaukee is only a 12-point favorite against Detroit, but Damian Lillard on the other side of if you're playing a bunch of Jaden Ivey, I mean, it's 248 total, and Dame is showing up fourth in the model, 9,200. Like, I guess there's not that many guys. There's no one more expensive lower than him, but
Yeah.
Damian Lillard, pretty good GPP play. Like, all these guys at the top, basically 10% or under, all look pretty good to me.
Mhm.
There was a guy I wanted to mention. Back to the mid range.
Yeah.
Alec Burks. Why?
Mm.
Okay, so he's only 14% owned. I thought he was going to be a little bit chalkier. He kind of had a super blow up game last time. And so at 14%, I mean, 5,400, it's still a little bit more than I want to pay for a projection of 25 minutes, but I don't mind it. Maybe it's kind of a pivot off of Jaden Ivey, but I think Jaden
Yeah.
Ivey's in a really good spot still.
Yeah, I mean, the Ivy price on DK is certainly easy to get to. 75 on FanDuel is really tough. I don't mind Burks as kind of an ownership pivot, and it is interesting the spread here. I mean, I could definitely see Milwaukee blowing them out. They played really close the other day, though. I don't know if they're in Milwaukee. Actually, the game was in Detroit, but yeah, I remember thinking, how is this game so close? Dame went for 75 fantasy points in a competitive contest, so I'm definitely with you on him. And yeah, no Cunningham tonight does open up not only the Chalky Ivy, but Burks and maybe even Killian Hayes as a pivot. Hayes not a guy who tends to shoot the ball all that frequently, very, very low floor. But if you're playing large field contests, you're going to want to look for direct leverage, and you are getting that playing a guard other than Jaden Ivey from Detroit.
And either way, no matter who you end up playing from this game, I do think we want to get exposure. I mean, it's a super high total, and like you just said, I mean, the total of the last game ended up being, 276 or something like that?
Yeah, it was
And
ridiculous.
so, I mean, Jaden Ivey's been on a tear, 6,700. It's a fine price. Milwaukee is not good at guarding guards. I should say they give up a lot of fantasy points to guards anyway. And so Jaden Ivey, Alec Burks, I don't think you have to play one of them, but I think it's good to mix both of these guys in a bunch. And then on DK, where's the best position to play Walker? And so it just depends on who else you're playing at the guard position. I mean, for me, am I getting a lot of good small forwards? We'll get to the forwards in a minute, but there's really not that many pure small forwards I'm getting to other than Vince Williams. And so we do have the freedom to play them at shooting guard or small forward. There are some point guards I want to get to, all the guys that we just mentioned.
Yeah.
So, I mean, either way, it depends on who else you're getting to in your lineup. Wherever he fits, I think is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Franz Wagner projected for 30 minutes at 0% ownership. And so when guys come back from injuries, to me, it's kind of like he's good to go. But there is some kind of a acclimation period, I guess, getting back in the groove of things. He's been out for, a month or something.
Yeah.
And so projected for 30 minutes. Sure, he could play a few minutes more. I don't think he's going to play much less than 30 if he does play.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
and no faults tonight either. Should help his usage a little bit. He did play 27 his first game back, so yeah, I think the 30 to 32 is a fair projection. Again, low total game here against a pretty solid defense, but I mean he's been awesome all season, and with no faults, you have to think maybe he gets a little bit of extra usage here.
And I did not. So I'm not really getting to Joe Ingles over on DraftKings. I did not notice how chalky he was over on FanDuel, though, at 4K. Is this someone you're even considering today?
No, I'm doing the 25 max. I'll have him in 0 lineups.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
It's like insane, and he's been chalky every single slate, and he still hasn't had a good game. Like I don't get it at all.
Yeah, like he's cheap. I mean, we can project him for probably close to 20 minutes, but yeah, you basically have to hit the nuts with the rest of your lineup to make him, worth playing, I guess. So it's not I would just rather play Kyle Anderson, and I hate playing Kyle Anderson this season. So there were a couple other guards I wanted to mention. What do you think about Trey Jones, Alex Caruso at low ownership?
I don't mind Jones. I think he's solid. Yeah, I mean, another chance that game blows out, but he's another young guy who we do see playing in the fourth sometimes. I've been beating the drum of him being starting point guard there all year. I feel like I say this every time the Spurs are on my stream. But yeah, no, I like him. I think he's solid here. He's done really well with Wemby on the floor too this season, and Wemby isn't tonight, so that's a good thing. Who's the other one? Caruso. Yeah, I don't mind Caruso. Again, Levine out. He's been seeing more minutes. Earlier in the season, it seemed like he was on a minutes cap. I think that's completely gone now. Yeah, I mean, he played 25, 27, 30. But yeah, there's no hard cap on him. What should be a competitive game here against the Suns. I like him. I'll also say Ayo, though. Even coming off the bench, I mean, he's been pretty much matching Caruso in terms of production. And he might be even lower rounds. I don't think either are going to be that popular, but I'd be fine going to either of those guys, again, with Levine out. Obviously, Kobe White looks good, but it's going to be tough to pay up at that point guard spot. So if you are looking for value, I like Caruso. But I don't think you should ignore Donsumu either. Wouldn't want the two of them in the same lineup. But both have shown pretty high ceilings. So yeah, at their prices, they're fine.
No, I completely agree. And, they're still value, but they're not the value that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is. But them coming in at 4% and 3%, we mentioned there's a lot of mid-range plays that we're going to like today. And so getting to either of these guys, I don't mind. Like you said, I'm not going to play them both in the same lineup, but I am I'm getting a bunch of Caruso. I'm getting a little bit of Dosunmu, just in case. Yeah. So, and then who is Terkavion Smith, and should we play him? Is he showing up in the model? So he's not showing up in the model. That means he's projected for less than 10 minutes. Now, Pat Beverly's out and Jaden Springer's out for Philadelphia. I saw this guy pop up last week. I was like, I've never heard of this guy. I'm not sure that we can really expect him to play much outside of blowout run. I mean, he played...
This is a funny stat line. He played 1 minute and he hit 2 threes.
Yeah, he's played like 1 minute total in his entire NBA career, and so this isn't a guy that I'm going to consider even at the min price. It's just if he was playing 20 minutes, if he got 20 minutes, then yeah, we could consider
Oh
him because
yeah,
just being
and
on the court. But
yeah, and this is a situation too where I'll kind of go off coaching tendencies. Like Nick Nurse really likes to keep a tight rotation. He's not the type of coach to be auditioning young players in games and things like that. So I don't know. Is there a chance he comes out of nowhere? Maybe, but yeah, Nurse isn't the type of coach to really kind of do something like that, in my opinion. I think we see. Not that I want to play him. Furkan Korkmaz probably more than we want to. Daniel House will probably get some decent run. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maxi could play 40 minutes, so I don't know that they need to go that deep at guard.
yeah, you mentioned Kelly Oubre very close to the top of value, and this is probably the player that gets the most benefit. But I also think that they just kind of have to run Tyrese Maxey out for a few more minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
we know Nick Nurse is not shy about playing his stars 42, 43 minutes. And
Hmm.
so Tyrese Maxey at his ownership today, 16 and 29. It's not bad. I think it's fine to get to him. He's a pretty good GPP play.
Yeah, for sure.
Any thoughts of playing a lineup with Dame and Giannis, or is that, or does that take away from both?
Eh,
So I personally wouldn't do it. Maybe against better teams, sure, but it just for Detroit to keep this game close, for Giannis and Dame to both get there, who has to go off from Detroit? And it's like, are we going to play two Detroit, two Milwaukee guys? Yeah, it's a super high total, but it is a 12-point spread, and I don't love targeting big spreads, even though we have a lot of big spreads tonight.
Yeah, I mean, last time they faced, which was 2 days ago, they both did get there, which is ridiculous. But I don't like, especially when a team plays close with a much worse team, you almost feel like they kind of took them lightly or whatever. So, like, tonight, I expect the Bucks to come out hard, probably blow them out. Kind of embarrassing the showing they gave, I think, on Saturday, was it? Trying to find the score of that game. 1 second. Um, where is it? But yeah, I know they're playing in Detroit. Yeah, the Bucks won by 6 on the road, and it was a really close game. I don't know. I don't think they want to be playing that close with the Pistons, especially with Cunningham out. Really bad look. I'm guessing they put an emphasis on blowing them out of the arena tonight, but we'll see.
A couple other guys before we move on to forwards. I'm interested in Julian Champagny. No one's playing him. He hasn't displayed like a super ceiling, but he is kind of a pivot to Nickel Alexander-Walker at just 3,700 over on DraftKings.
Yeah.
And Jordan wait, did I just say Jordan? Yeah, Jordan McLaughlin. I mean, he's the direct pivot to Nickel Alexander-Walker. Now, he didn't really get a lot of his time until the blowout game, and we
Right.
only have him projected for 17 minutes. But I mean, 70% versus 8%. Jordan McLaughlin, I don't think he's that much worse of an NBA player than Nickel Alexander-Walker is. Nas probably a little bit better on defense, so that's a big difference of
Yeah.
just being on the court. But I don't mind mixing in Jordan McLaughlin instead of Nickel Alexander-Walker either.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I just think that's the direct pivot. Like, it would take me a lot of lineups to start making that pivot, but I know you're someone who does like 150. It'd definitely be a move I'd be making a little bit. Um, yeah, it's just tricky. I mean, I don't know. I guess we're gonna get to forwards in a minute, but yeah, that Minnesota game's really seems important, but the spread definitely scares me.
And just to sum up guards before we move on, my top exposed guys right now: Nickel Alexander Walker, Jaden Ivey, basically all the Toronto guys: Barrett, Quickly, Barnes, and Gary Trent. I'm getting to a bunch of Derek White's near the top of my exposures. Luca,
Nice.
Luke Kennard, Trey Jones, Ant Edwards, assuming he plays, John Conchar, Caruso. So all the guys that we mentioned, and then Cole Anthony under 5K on DraftKings with no Markel Fultz. Just he's a pretty good GPP play at low ownership. So
Yep.
let's take a look at forwards now. We already know who the chalk at forward is.
Yeah.
Well, Nikhil is forward eligible, but Kyle Anderson is the guy I was thinking of. And I don't know. I don't mind getting to him. We only have him projected for 23 minutes, but his usage is off and on. I don't think his ownership is too high where we have to just say, all right, this is a fade, but his usage has not been what it's been in the past seasons. Like I said, he's off and on, and so we'll see how that goes. But the 5,100 on FanDuel, is that something that we should be trying to avoid?
Honestly, yeah, only because I think there's such an obvious pivot in Jaden McDaniels. I mean, you're getting the starter. He's been playing more minutes every single night. And yeah, I just think he's been the better fantasy producer of the two. So if I could get McDaniels lower owned, than Anderson, I certainly want to do it. I'm just checking their ownerships now. Um, but let's see here. Yeah, McDaniels 20, Anderson 16. So nope. I guess you could get to both of them and feel okay about it. But if you're not playing I mean, you could go to either of them as a pivot. I thought Anderson would be more popular, but I guess 5,100. It makes sense that he's not.
Yeah,
But yeah.
like I get the DraftKings exposure, but Jaden McDaniels on DraftKings, he's $1,000 more. But I mean, I think that's a pretty good pivot, like you just said.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
going to be doing that a little bit. It's who's the other value? So the other top owned guy is Jaren Jackson. He's been pretty good, and it seems like he's been a little bit more aggressive recently with Bane and John Morant out. Before, like there might be times he has 4 points in the first half or something, but no, he's taking shots, and I mean he is the man. I always say I'm nervous to play guys like this when the team is completely depleted because who's going to pass him the ball? But Luke Kennard and Vince Williams look pretty competent right now, so
Yeah.
I don't mind them. DeMar makes sense. He's still too cheap over on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel, do you like the 17%?
Yeah, I do. And honestly, 8,200 on FanDuel doesn't feel as heavy as does over on DraftKings. Like, yeah, there's a lot of good mid-range forwards tonight. DeRozan's one I'm getting to a ton. I think right now my two highest owned are actually DeRozan and RJ Barrett. Yeah, Barrett, 7,100. Not the best price, but he continues to stuff the stat sheet, playing a ton of minutes here. Only played 28 last game, but he almost did a ceiling regardless. Before that, he's been playing like 34 to 36 every single night. So I like both sides here. I'm definitely going to have a lot of Kennard. I'm forced onto some Conchar, but I really like running it back with Barrett more than anyone. Obviously, Barnes looks fine. Trent's good. You mentioned him before, but I think the most consistent player right now for Toronto has been RJ Barrett, which
Yeah,
is
I
crazy
mean,
to say knowing who he was on the Knicks. But
right? I mean, it was kind of hard for him playing third fiddle to Brunson and Randall, but yeah,
yeah,
RJ Barrett, it's like it's rejuvenated his career. Really happy for him and quickly too. I mean, these guys are just on a tear. I'm getting to a bunch of both of them. Let's sort by OF index. I mean, it's obviously Giannis at the very top, coming in for half the ownership of Embiid, 16%, 5%.
yeah,
I think we can get to Giannis. You know, it's a big blowout spread, but like I said, we don't mind playing the guys on the team doing the blowing out because if it blows out, Giannis or Dame probably went off. What about the other guys at the top? I mean, Jason Tatum's always been kind of hard for me to get to. KD's been going off lately. Victor, minutes restriction, but Karl Anthony Towns is someone I'm pretty interested in today.
yeah. Towns without Conley should do a little bit more ball handling. I know that sounds weird because he's so big, but that has been what we've seen from them in the past. It's a great matchup against Charlotte. Again, no Williams, no Nick Richards. That front court is going to be very soft. I mean, we can talk about Gobert when we get to centers, but
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Towns does have forward eligibility on both sites, and he's cheaper for some reason than he's been over the past few weeks. He's down at 8K on FanDuel, 7,700 over on DK. Love, love, love that shout. And yeah, I mean, he should do everything he wants, anything he wants here. Excuse me. Definitely want to get to Towns tonight. I'm a little bit surprised he's not more popular.
Yeah, 13%, 18%. Like, it seems fine. We just got news Anthony Edwards is in.
Mm.
Pretty sure the model already has him in, so it's not
Yep.
really changing anything we're doing. But yeah, I kind of like pieces from both sides. I mean, Charlotte's super low owned, so if we're playing more than a couple Minnesota guys, we probably want to run it back with the Brandon Miller shout that Nick
Brandon
had,
Miller.
or
Yep.
I think
Bridges.
yeah, Bridges, Rozier, Ball. Like Ball's been a little bit scary for me to play since he came back from the injury, but it seems like he's not on a minutes restriction anymore. So just hasn't had that, blow up 60 fantasy point game yet. But he's a good I mean, this is the day to play him and hope he has that 60-point fantasy game,
Right.
right? When no one else is playing him.
Yep.
So I mentioned Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's coming in pretty low. I think we both prefer Derek White if we're playing
Yeah.
anyone from Boston, and then Al Horford. Unicorn Love in the chat. Love Horford 5,700 versus Dallas. Yeah, 5,700 on FanDuel. It's a little tougher for me because he's center only, but the power
Yeah.
forward eligibility on DraftKings seems great. But what are you doing with Al Horford on FanDuel?
Um, I'm gonna have a bunch. I mean, I do want to get up to Embiid. Like, I want to make sure I have those shares covered. But honestly, my second favorite center, like tonight, point per dollar is probably Horford. I see myself getting to a ton of them. I wish he had Ford eligibility. He has most of the season, so it is super annoying for that reason. But I think that's what's keeping his ownership down. Again, I mean, wide range of outcomes, but at that price, you really only need like 30, 35 points for him to maybe land optimal if everything else works out. So I like Horford a lot here. I just wish he had forward eligibility because then I'd be honestly very much over the field. But yeah, I don't mind. Probably, I don't know. I honestly think I'm playing the 25 max. I'll probably have him close to 40% tonight, which is like double, maybe triple the field.
Yeah, I don't mind it, and we do like centers against Dallas, and
Mhm.
Horford, is a center tonight,
Yep.
and so I'm not getting crazy ownership like I thought he would. Like I'm not at 20% or anything, but I'm getting a fair amount over the field. Vince Williams showing up so highly in the model. Like I already mentioned him, but it's so crazy to me, and he's still
Yep.
under 20%. I think we can get there, and it's fine.
Love it.
Probably prefer the other guys we mentioned, but Vince Williams, mix him in. Brandon Miller showing up kind of high
Zero
in model.
percent. Is
Yeah,
that
it
right?
just I mean, it must be right now. I mean, let me do a refresh and just make sure. But yeah, there's a lot of low owned guys. There's going to be concentrated chalk. It's okay to play them since we have enough low owned, very low
Mhm.
owned options. And if you play a 0% owned Brandon Miller, you really don't have to do anything else. Like if all the chalk goes off, Brandon Miller goes off, you're probably going to be in a good spot, especially in small field tournaments.
Absolutely. And man, I'm shocked. Like, I know a lot of people watch game logs and things like that, and like, he's coming off 240 plus fantasy point games. Like, you would think that he would just draw some ownership off that alone. And again, he's one of these hybrids. Like, the coaches want him in the regular rotation, and then when they blow out, they still get the extra minutes because these guys are getting ramped up for the rest of their career. Miller was a top pick. And yeah, he's looked as good as he ever has right now. So I'm definitely going to get to a bunch of them.
I thought Miller was such a bad pick.
I mean, I mean, given the rap sheet or whatever, I mean, it was yeah. At the time, it seemed off, but I mean, I don't know. He's kind of rounding into form, I think.
Yeah, if this is a guy they want to pair with Lamelo for the next 5 years, let's see how it works out. And we did just get news Karis LeVert is ruled out, so we'll take a look at the Cavaliers' backcourt rotation in a minute. But I imagine that's going to bump up Sam Merrill for me. And then I haven't been getting to Struce recently. He's been not that like breakout player that he was at the beginning of the season, but
Yeah.
might have to mix in some Struce today. And then Donovan. It's not going to affect him too much, but a little bit more reason to get to that low on Donovan Mitchell.
Yep. And Okoro too, I'll shout. Obviously, a
Mhm.
little bit less consistent, but I actually think he has a higher floor than Struce and Merrill just because he's not as scoring dependent. Won't always get the big upside games out of him that we've been seeing out of Merrill, but as a last piece in, I think Okoro makes sense as well. And he's cheaper than the others, I think. Yeah, 4,400. Merrill's 48 on DK. He's only 100 cheaper on FanDuel, but Struce is the most expensive of all three, so I can see getting to some Okoro.
Yeah, and Okoro is actually one of the guys that I deliberately tried to get more exposure to today, and
Nice.
so love that call. Max Struess 5,600 on DraftKings, Sam Merrill 4,800. I mean, to me, Struess is definitely the better play. He has a higher ceiling,
Yeah.
and if no one's going to play him at this super low price, I mean, we were playing Struess when he was up to 6,500 in spots when Karis LeVert was out.
Yep.
I think we want to mix in some Struess today.
I agree.
And why do we like Cole Anthony? Because Marco Fultz is out and his price is good.
Yeah, I think Suggs is safer. Like if you're only picking one of those guards,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, I mean at the price, I really do like Suggs as well. But I mean Cole Anthony, no one's playing him, and he's very cheap.
Yeah, and he's displayed a ceiling. His floor is not. I mean, his floor is not terrible, but it's that
Yeah,
ceiling outcome that we're looking for, and he's not super high owned. And I know Franz Wagner's back, but this is basically the same spot Cole Anthony's been in all season, and he's had those blow up spots in this spot. So,
yeah.
like getting to him there. Do we know who the starting center will be for Toronto? Underdog says Jonte Porter,
Love me,
and
Jonathan.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
They tried the Thaddeus Young experiment. Not sure how it's going for them, but
Yeah, they've been starting Porter. I mean, the thing with Porter is he's only playing like 20 minutes or so, so there's other ways to go. It takes a lot for him to hit his ceiling. Like, I don't want any Thad Young. I'm not saying to pivot directly, but you might just want to go to a different team for value at center. Porter's been fine, but really hasn't flashed much of an upside.
that's a pretty good pivot into a center. It's just for me, Jonte Porter is a play because he is. I think he was low on. Let's see where he's at. I mean, coming in for 10%, I don't think that's too bad. The 4,200 on DraftKings seems great. The 5,100 on FanDuel, I don't think you're going to get there, are you?
No, definitely not.
Yeah,
Especially since I'm getting a lot of Horford. Yeah.
yeah. It's just a good price. I mean, actually, his ownership is even higher than I thought it was going to be, but I still don't mind mixing him in. He's shown kind of a ceiling in these low minutes, but we do have a lot of centers we're going to be interested in today.
Hmm.
Is Asar Thompson a good choice? So I don't think he's a good choice. I don't know what Monty Williams is doing with his rotation in Detroit. Like you have a future defensive superstar, first team all defense for 10 years in a row or something,
Yeah.
and you're not giving him minutes. I mean, he got 32 minutes in the last game, shot 10 for 15. That's an anomaly. He's never even like he barely ever takes over 10 shots anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you could mix them in, I definitely think. But I agree. I mean, you can't read these rotations from Monty right now. Osser is more talented, in my opinion, than Killian Hayes. I'd rather get him minutes than Alec Burks, who's just like a vet that can shoot the ball well. Like,
Hmm.
it's more valuable for the Pistons to get him run. And you're right, they're just not doing it at all. So I like him. It's good he played 31 minutes in the same matchup. Makes me feel a little bit better. But it's definitely a large field, high risk contest only. I wouldn't be playing him anything small field or cash.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, he's projected for 1% ownership. We haven't projected for 22 minutes. And like Nick just said, we have no idea if he's going to play 18 minutes or if he's going to play 32 or whatever it was. And so he's a guy that you mix in, but don't go crazy on him. And definitely, I probably wouldn't play him in small field.
Right.
So we already mentioned a couple centers we like. We like Embiid. We like Al Horford. Just going to sort by OF index. Well, let's sort by ownership and see who's the chalk tonight. Embiid, Jaren Jackson, Xavier Tillman. He is questionable, so we'll see about that. Love Rudy Gobert against Charlotte. Still like centers against Charlotte. Giannis center eligible, but I think there's enough centers on today's slate that we probably want to try to get Giannis into power forward slot. Naz Reid is showing up as pretty chalky with Mike Conley out, and his price 4,900. I don't know. I hate playing Naz Reid when Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns are in.
Yeah.
What do you think is like is he kind of a pivot to Kyle Anderson? Not really.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I'm kind of biased. I love my dad and brother both went to LSU, so I'm a big LSU fan, basketball, football. Like Naz Reid was a stud there, definitely underrated, went undrafted. I've been on this kid forever, so I'm just hyped that he got a big contract and he's been crushing. But yeah, I mean, coming off the bench, fantasy point per minute, he's better than Kyle Anderson. He's better than McDaniels, who's going to be starting here. You don't know for sure that he's going to get the run, but most games he's over 20 minutes, so I like him here. I think he has a ceiling. But it's weird. Like, yeah, you don't feel great because he's listed as a center, but he kind of plays on the wing a little bit too. So yeah, I like him probably more than I should. I'm not going to be playing him on FanDuel though, where he's up to 6,300, which is just
Yeah.
insane. But I do think 49 at 15% ownership does make some sense. It's just like the other value centers aren't that chalky on DK, so like it's not going to be a direct pivot unless you're really playing three centers in your lineup. I think. But yeah, I mean, point per dollar, sub 5K. I think he's a fine play.
It's like he's very boomer busty, so just understand that he might have a terrible game.
Yeah,
And if you
it's
play
possible.
him, like 15%, it's not super high, but it's a little bit higher than I'd like to, when we're really just chasing, I don't know, like a 35 plus fantasy point game from him. And I already like Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns a
Yeah, I
lot.
know. That's the issue. Yeah. Like,
So,
I love those two.
and I am setting a rule, max two of them. Like, I don't want to restrict it to just one.
Right.
And Naz Reid does kind of back up both of them. And so definitely don't play all three in the same lineup.
No.
And I'm not sure if I'm going to put Kyle Anderson in that group yet. I haven't decided. But there's definitely something that you want to be careful about with playing these Minnesota guys because we're interested in basically everyone that's playing today.
Right.
Vooch, Jalen Duren, Jared Allen. These guys all seem fine at their ownerships to me. The prices are good in the mid range. We save a lot of salary off of the chalky Joel Embiid.
Yep, I like Allen a lot. I don't know why he has power forward eligibility on FanDuel, but he still does. Where we don't have it for Horford, who actually plays a lot of power forward, so that's pretty funny. But yeah, I like Allen. I think he's solid. We already talked about a lot of these guys that are kind of hybrids when we talked about forward. But Jaren Jackson, Karl Anthony Towns, probably two of my favorite center plays tonight. They are more expensive, but we do have enough value kind of at small forward. And shooting guard to get there, I think, pretty consistently. Yeah, we talked about Embiid. I want to get to a bunch of him. FanDuel only 13% owned, so I do want to make that a priority. He continues to be lower owned than he should be just because of the price. But I mean, no one's been more consistent as far as the pay up goes. Like you can look at what Luke has been doing, what Embiid's been doing, Giannis, Joker. I mean, Embiid's consistently over 60 fantasy points. You can't say the same out of for any of those other guys. So I'm still surprised that his ownership doesn't climb higher. Ever since Harden's been gone, he's been ridiculous. And yeah, Gobert, we mentioned. I mean, too cheap on both sites, in my opinion. All the bigs here should eat for Minnesota. Again, PJ Washington, probably the starting center. Then you got Nathan Mensah, and I don't even know who else coming off the bench.
Yeah,
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 it's dire there in the
exactly.
front court.
So Wendell Carter for me, It's so weird because I think his ownership is too low for him being
Mhm.
5,400, and we have him projected for 30 minutes, which is a high projection for Wendell Carter, and the model still doesn't like him, so that's something to keep in mind. I don't know if the model's adjusting to maybe his recent usage. I mean, Goga was out of the rotation basically, so it's just more room for Wendell Carter to work, and so I do like Wendell Carter, but definitely keep that in mind that the model
Ye-
disagrees.
Yeah, I have a comment on that, and this is me guessing, but it is the first back to back he's playing since his return from
Mm.
injury. I don't think we've heard word that he's going to be limited, but in a game where Goga seems like he was wiped from the rotation, maybe there's a chance they were resting Goga to give him more run here. And again, this is me speculating. I have no facts to back this up, but I would proceed with maybe a little bit of caution. It's easy to get over the field on Wendell Carter, but don't be surprised if Goga suddenly plays 20 plus minutes tonight because they were giving Carter the extra run last night.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. I mean,
It's a theory. Like I don't know for sure, but
well, like I said, 30-minute projection for Wendell Carter, it seems a little high. I would expect him to be closer to 24, 25. So maybe the model is already accounting for Goga not playing in the last game, but maybe it's over adjusting a little bit too much. So just be careful, but I'm probably going to be slightly over the field on Wendell Carter. I mean, is there anyone else? Santi Aldama was kind of super chalk. Was he super chalk? I don't know how high his ownership
uh,
got, but people were definitely excited to play him when he was starting.
yeah. I mean, it's funny when Aldama had those huge games earlier in the season. That was like before we even knew who Vince Williams was, and now Williams
Right,
is
right.
taking up all the usage. So I don't think Aldama has that same ceiling that he did earlier in the year.
Yeah, and
But
he's typically a guy I want to target when JJJ is out.
yeah,
It's a little weird because Memphis is super short on centers. It's if Xavier Tillman is out, I imagine Aldama's ownership is going to climb into the double digits for sure. The 5,900 price on FanDuel, I think it's a little bit steep for me, but the 5K price on DraftKings, if his ownership stays in check, I'll probably be getting there a fair amount more than the field, depending where he comes up to.
yeah, I got one more DK center for you. It looks like no one's going to own him. Derek Lively is only
Hmm.
5,300, kind of similar to your Wendell Carter play. Um, not that Porzingis is some great defender, but the Boston is a little bit thin, which means Horford will be off the floor at times. Lively could do well here. Very high total game, very low on center play. 67 on FanDuel, tougher for me to get to. But he's flashed the ceiling even when he's not hitting 30 minutes, so I don't mind it.
Yeah, and that's someone that I am interested in. I will say his points, rebounds, assist line today is 16 and a half. I did hit the over, and if he gets that, with points and rebounds, maybe an assist or two, and gets, I don't know, a
Oh,
couple
I
blocks
love
and
that.
steals, he's going to get
Look
there.
at that. I might play that right now.
Yeah, it's
16 and a half?
yeah, maybe it adjusted since I did my
Oh,
stuff before the
shit.
stream, but I thought that was one of the better
Oh, I
line.
agree.
It's pretty juiced to the over. But I mean, it's good for fantasy purposes. And 5,300, another kind of boom or bust guy where yeah, he might kill you, but he might put up 30 plus something. It's a 2.5 point spread. I don't
Yeah.
know what other center they're going to play. Porzingis is out, and so it's like up against Al Horford. But yeah, another guy I'm pretty interested in. I just want to mention Miles Bridges, like listed at center, is so weird. But I mean, one
That's
and two
weird.
percent owned. Another Charlotte guy that we're interested in getting to since we're playing so much Minnesota today.
Mhm.
Did Ivy get love? Missed the early part of the stream. Yeah, Ivy is currently my second highest exposed guard over on DraftKings. The model likes him a lot, and he's been on a tear. The minutes have been there. No Cade Cunningham. I think Ivy's a great play today.
Agreed.
7,500 on FanDuel. It's still a little steep, and he's still pulling 30% ownership, but I just think that makes his 6,700 price at 31% on DK look even better, actually.
Yeah, definitely a better play on DK. I mean, if he wasn't more popular on FanDuel, I wouldn't mind paying up to get a little different. But over 20% at that price, I think you could just pivot to some like deal at lower ownership. But I don't mind
And I don't know if Knox has been in and out of the starting lineup. I don't know if he
it.
started last game, but he is starting again today.
Ooh,
Kevin
I
Knox, and
never get him
so
right, man. I
yeah,
think we were on stream together that game he went for almost 40 against Houston, and I told someone not to play him and immediately regretted it. But yeah, when he starts, I mean, he's been good. I don't mind mixing him in. Definitely riskier than some of the other value we have from Memphis or Minnesota, though.
I think that was a day I accidentally played way more of him than I wanted to, and it ended up working out. But I was so
Yeah.
mad when the game locked. And Nick Richards is out. Lamelo is in. The Sixers are starting Maxi Oubre, Harris, Batum, and Embiid, so that's all expected there. Can we play non Kyle Anderson together on DK? Yeah, I think it's fine. Kyle Anderson handles the ball a bit, but Nas projected for 30 minutes, and Kyle Anderson is probably going to come off the bench and kind of be like that hybrid small forward ball handling role.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I imagine a lot of the field is doing that though. And so if you like, I'm not doing it in every lineup, but I am seeing it in a few of my lineups. So I wouldn't say it's like avoid that combo to kind of give yourself a little bit more leverage. But I mean, don't do it in every lineup. But I'm getting a bunch of both of those guys, so I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Is Jalen Johnson a good pick for tonight? Yeah, on the night slate, I think Jalen Johnson's a pretty good play. I mean, the model loves him every day. Let me see if I can pull up Jalen Johnson here real quick, and then
Yeah.
we'll get into a dummy build.
No Trey, he's going to see extra usage.
His OF index is double digits. DK value is sky high, and there's no ownerships populating because it's night slate only. But yeah, Jalen Johnson. When I built my dummy single game showdown entry, Jalen Johnson looks great. Have him a bunch on the night slate, so I think he's a good play. And then DeJounte with Trey Young out too is going to be awesome. Suggs, tough game last game. I mean, similar to Cole Anthony, I mean, they're both just kind of GPP plays. The problem with Suggs all season has been minutes. He's projected for 28.5, and I think he should probably be playing closer to like 33, 34 every game, but they don't want to do that. Good point per minute guy, and he seems like a guy who always goes off in the first quarter and then just stops doing anything.
That's annoying. I know, it's like the opposite of Jimmy Butler or a Tatum at times. Tatum will have like 2 fantasy points in the first quarter, finish with 60. Suggs he'll have 20 after one stint, and then you're finishing with 24. Yeah, you start to learn those trends. It's too bad we can't play like first half DFS or second half DFS.
Right.
These things.
Well, Prize Picks has like first quarter stats, first half stats. If you can, it could be a little bit of an edge.
Under on Tatum and flip them in the second half.
McDaniels should be okay. Yeah, we both like McDaniels as kind of a pivot off of Kyle Anderson. Nick mentioned he's starting. His minutes are probably a little bit more secure, but if he is playing bad, then he will lose minutes. But like everyone around him is such high usage anyway that all he has to do is play defense, hit a couple threes. Luke Cornett. So we mentioned we both love Al Horford. Luke Cornett at 4,700 is just completely off the board for me.
Yeah, I have no interest. I mean, 200 more, you're getting a Nas Reed who's guaranteed minutes. I mean, 600 more, you're getting a Wendell Carter who's starting. Cornette should be the backup here. He does have a 30-point ceiling, but I just don't think it's something you necessarily need to chase because there's so many plays in that range that have similar upside tonight that, it just feels a little bit too cute.
So refreshed a couple minutes ago, but this is where the current ownership projections are. We have not that many guys above 20%. It is a 7-game slate, but yeah, we mentioned enough low-owned guys. Play the chalk. I think all these plays are fine. I'm kind of hoping Xavier Tillman gets ruled out, so it's just one less decision I have to make. But like pretty much everyone on this list looks great to me. We didn't mention Tobias, but maybe Tobias is the only one that I'm not really going to get to. I'd rather just get to RJ Barrett at the same ownership.
Yeah, I agree.
Why do we like Vince Williams so much? Because his usage lately has been insane, and he's playing really heavy minutes.
Yep. No Bane, no Smart, no Moran.
Yeah.
Kennard running the point, but doing a lot of passing. It's opened up a lot of shots for Vince Williams.
Well, Vince Williams, I saw his I can't remember exactly what it was, but his points rebounds prop was 20 today, and it was juiced to the over. And I don't have the balls to hit it, but it's a little bit telling that Vegas is pretty high on Vince Williams, and so. Yeah, so let's build out a quick dummy here. I'm going to go ahead and throw in Nah since that seems like the the right move. Kyle Anderson?
Yeah, we can go Anderson. He's too cheap on DK.
Put Kyle Anderson at the small forward. Do we want to just throw in Embiid and see how that looks?
Yeah, throw in Embiid and then run back those T-Wolves with Brandon Miller, I think.
Oh, I like that. Let's get Brandon Miller in here at the guard spot. Outside of that Charlotte, Minnesota game, who are some guys that we were thinking about? I mean, we can't fit Luka in this lineup, can we? Leaves us we might be 4,800. I mean,
we could.
I'd rather get to a bunch of mid-range guys, but I mean, it's possible. We have the value today.
Yeah, I think we would go to Memphis next. Maybe pluck
Vince Williams.
Conchar's cheap there. I mean, Williams 6'2", I like, but if we have Luka, it might be tougher.
Leaves us 4,100 for power forward and utility. Yeah, let's take Luka out. Put in Derek White.
Yeah, White's good.
Power
maybe
forward.
Maybe DeRozan of power forward. Is he still power forward on DK?
I believe he is. I wanted to fit in Jaden Ivey. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Let's put in Jaden Ivey, and then that leaves us $6K for a power forward. I mean, you switch the positions around, but just to show who our big leans are today. I mean, we're 100 away from being able to get to Horford, who we both like. Right. PJ Washington, we'll have 500 left. Maybe we can upgrade one of the other positions.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this seems. Let's try putting.
It's close. Yeah.
Yeah, let's put Kyle Anderson at small forward. And then, or I'm sorry, let's put Vince Williams at small forward, Kyle Anderson at power forward. Let's see how that looks. Kyle Anderson leaves a 6K for a forward. Keldon Johnson seems fine. Caris LeVert is out. Max Strus, maybe upgrade another position.
McRae's not terrible if you upgrade elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. And so, for the most part, these are the plays that we like today. If you played this like exact lineup, mix in one other kind of lowish owned guy, but you already have Brandon Miller in there, so it's really not super necessary.
Right.
And then Allen or Gordon for Suns.
Allen's questionable, right?
Yeah, Grayson Allen's questionable. If he does play, his price is coming up on DraftKings. On the main slate, I don't know if it's necessary today because we're really just hoping for that ceiling game where he hits like 6 threes or something stupid.
Yeah.
And then Gordon's been terrible and his usage has been low, so I'm not super interested in those guys there.
Yeah, I agree.
Wise Contrar, good play on DK because his minutes are high and he's been starting. His price is still a little bit too cheap. It hasn't adjusted to, I don't know, his new role. And like, it's not like he's a bad player. He's shown potential before. He just was out of the rotation for a while.
Yeah.
And then, do we like Caruso or Suggs more? I personally like Caruso more, but Suggs, he probably has a bigger ceiling. So,
yeah, if you're looking for floor, it's Caruso. Ceiling, it's Suggs.
Any final words, Nick, before we get out of here?
No. I think we have most of the news. Obviously, keep an eye on lineups. Some of these guys that we're projecting to start, like Alexander Walker, Conchar, etc., they should, but there's always the chance that they throw us for a loop and we get some other weird backups in. So definitely hop in the Discord. Just keep an eye on lineups, and yeah, let's crush tonight.
All right, cool. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow. Good luck tonight. Catch us in the Discord.